Hello, secret gang, it's me, Uncle Rufus. Oh yes, and you may be thinking, but how can he be Uncle Rufus when he's an orphan and therefore definitely isn't an uncle? But look at my mug, world's greatest uncle. And it's true, I am an orphan and therefore don't have any nephews or nieces, and so I had to go out and buy this for myself. So thanks everybody for taking the time to buy me a world's greatest uncle mug, which none of you did, so I had to buy it myself. Anyway, here I am, at home, enjoying a nice cup of tea, and I'm going to read you a story, okay? Because I just recently got my hands on a very interesting book. It's part of the Mr. Men series, and it's called Mr. Howard. Mr. Howard lived up to his name. He lived in what could have been a nice house, but wasn't. He never painted it, or mended the windows, or repaired the roof. Inside, it was the same. That's right, he didn't repair the inside roof either. No carpets, no curtains, no pictures, no fires. His house was not on fire anywhere inside. And what kind of a person doesn't set bits of their house on fire? Mr. Howard was so mean, he made his furniture out of old orange boxes and then complained about the price of nails. I mean, that's quite frugal, isn't it? Using old orange boxes. I mean, that's also kind of hipster, hipster Howard making, oh, look at my furniture, I made it out of old boxes, isn't it cool? Do you want to buy a chair for £800? I made it out of an old box. It's probably a showroom. And we don't know how expensive nails are. Maybe he's using gold nails. Maybe that's what hipsters do. Maybe they've got to get a box and nail it with gold nails. I mean, it's original. He was so mean. Do you know what he gave his brother for Christmas last year? I'm his brother, by the way. Do you know what he gave me for Christmas last year? A piece of coal. That's not true. He gave me nothing for Christmas. About a dream of getting a piece of coal from Howard. It wasn't as if Mr. Howard didn't have any money. Oh, no. No, he had loads of money. And he kept it all hidden in a box, which he kept in the kitchen. Okay. Early evening, he'd sit there counting it. Probably why he doesn't let me go in the kitchen when he's cooking. But would he spend it? Oh, dear me, no. Not old meanie Howard, not if he could help it. One day, Mr. Howard was sitting in his gloomy kitchen having a gloomy meal. He only ever had one meal a day. That's not true. And that day, he was having a cup of water and a piece of bread which was 3 weeks old. Suddenly, he was interrupted by a knock at the door. "Drat," he said, because he didn't like people. "Drat and bother." He opened the door, and there, on his doorstep, stood a wizard. A rather spacey wizard. "Hello," said the wizard. "I wonder if, by any chance, as it's such a warm day, you could possibly, if it's not too much trouble, be so kind as to, if it's not inconvenient, perhaps, as I'm very thirsty, provide me with, do you think, a glass, if it's not too much to ask, of water, please?" He was a rather wordy wizard. "No," replied Mr. Howard rudely, and shut the door in his face. And he went back into his kitchen to finish his meagre meal. But there, standing in front of him, was the wizard. "How did you get in?" gasped Mr. Howard. "Well," replied the wizard, "it was by, how shall I put it, I just, waved the old what's-its-name, magic wand, sonic screwdriver, don't you know, and, here I am, if you know what I mean. I put it on, get into Mr. Howard's house setting, it's 432. You must be very poor," he remarked kindly, looking around. "Oh, yes, I am," lied Mr. Howard. "Then perhaps I can help you," said the wizard, pulling up a box to sit down on. The box didn't move, so the wizard pulled it harder. And this time, it did move. In fact, it tipped up and spilled all Mr. Howard's money all over the floor. "Well," exclaimed the wizard, eyeing the money rolling all over the kitchen floor. Well. It would appear to me," he continued, "that you, sir, are an old meanie." Mr. Mean didn't hear him. He was too busy scrabbling all over the floor trying to pick up his money. "And meanies," added the wizard, "need to be taught a lesson." So saying, he waved his magic wand sonic screwdriver. All the money turned into potatoes. Potatoes! Poor old Mr. Stupid Howard. "Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear me," he wailed. "Please turn my money back into money. Oh, please, please, please," he begged. "Perhaps," replied the wizard, "but on the other hand, taking all things into account, by and large, things being what they are on the face of it, perhaps not. However," continued the wordy wizard, "if you make me a solemn promise never to be mean again, then I will turn your money back into money. But," he added sternly, "if you are ever mean again, then, how can I put it, then it's potatoes for you, my lad. Yes, if not, other vegetables as well." Then the wizard had the glass of water he'd come for in the first place, except it was a cup of water, because Mr. Howard didn't have any glasses. Then, with another wave of his wand, he turned the potatoes back into money, and another wave of his wand made himself disappear. "Stupid wizard," muttered Mr. Mean, picking up all his money. The following day, Mr. Mean decided to walk into town. He never took the bus because that cost money. On the way, he met an old washerwoman carrying an enormous bundle of washing. "Hello, it is me, Hitler," she said. I mean, the old washerwoman. Not Hitler. Please, kind sir," she asked, "could you possibly help me to carry my washing? It's very heavy." "No," replied Mr. Mean, "it's your washing, and you're Hitler. You carry it." But as soon as he'd said that, he felt a tingling in his nose. Mr. Mean's nose turned into a carrot. "Oh no," he gasped. The old washerwoman chuckled, etc. And then Mr. Mean remembered the wizard's words. "Yes, yes," he cried in a panic. "Of course I'll help you." And he carried the huge bundle of washing to where the old washerwoman wanted, and the carrot turned back into a nose, and off he went. The old washerwoman chuckled again and turned back into the wizard. It had been him all along, and not Hitler. That was a double ruse. On his way into town, Mr. Mean passed by a cottage garden. In the garden there was an old man chopping wood. He saw Mr. Mean going past and called out. "Excuse me," he called. "Could you give an old man a bit of a hand, young fella, me lad?" "No," replied Mr. Mean. "It's your wood. You chop it." That is a fair point. But as the word had passed his lips, guess what happened? His ears turned into tomatoes. "Oh no," he gasped. The old man chuckled, and Mr. Mean remembered the wizard's words. "Yes, yes," he cried. "Of course I'll give you a hand." And he chopped and chopped until all the wood was cut, and the tomatoes turned back into ears, and off he went. The old man chuckled again and turned back into the wizard, who was basically on just doing a big ruse to get free labour out of Mr. Howard. He was teaching Mr. Meanie Howard a lesson, just as he'd promised. Eventually, Mr. Howard arrived in the town. There was a little boy crying because his ball had got stuck on top of a wall. "Please, sir," cried the boy, "please, sir, could you reach my ball down for me? It's got stuck on top of a wall. It's very obviously quite a sticky wall because it's quite an improbable place for a ball, which is naturally inclined to rolling, to get stuck. Yes." And so on. "No," replied Mr. Mean, "it's your ball. You..." Then he stopped. There was a funny tingling feeling in his feet. "Yes, yes," he said hurriedly. "Of course I will." And he reached up and passed the ball to the boy and went on his way, looking anxiously at his feet. The little boy stopped crying and turned into the wizard. I think, he said to himself, that Mr. Howard, by and large, is beginning, if I'm not very much mistaken, to not be quite so mean. And I think, although I could be wrong, although I never am, that he has, thank goodness, learned his lesson. Today, he's nothing like so mean as he used to be. And he doesn't keep his money in a box in the kitchen anymore. He spent it all on having his house mended and painted and made spick and span. So the moral of this story is, don't save your money and keep it in a box in your kitchen, but spend it on yourself. And he's turned into quite a generous sort of fellow, if by generous you mean decorating your own house. Goodness, he's so generous. Do you know what he gave his brother last Christmas? 2 pieces of coal. 2 pieces, that's the moral. He's learned to give himself money and give his brother 2 rubbish presents instead of 1. Anyway, join me next time when I'll be reading another book called Mr. Howard.